Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Process of Healing, the Survivor Edition. Today, we've got a guest, Jenny, here to share her incredible story. Jenny's journey is all about courage, overcoming challenges, and finally finding freedom. For those of you who may not know, the Independent Fundamental Baptist movement, the IFB movement, is basically a really strict branch of Christianity. They believe in very literal interpretations of the Bible, which leads to a ton of rules and regulations in their communities. Things like what you can wear, what music you can listen to, pretty much every aspect of your life is closely monitored. And so we have our good friend Jenny here with us today to have a discussion about her journey with the IFB. Jenny, so we have been going live on TikTok for a couple of months now, and through some mutual acquaintances, you popped into one of our lives. We immediately became best friends, and here we are. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, same. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a little teaser that I like to throw out is, you and I had a what 2 hour conversation the other night, and we've got some really cool things in store for the future. So if you all are not following the Process of Healing on TikTok or Facebook, or what else are we on, Instagram, please do, because we have some really cool things. Jenny joined us for a live the other night, and we did some of the Am I the Asshole,
Am
which
I the
was
asshole?
a lot of fun. I got some really cool feedback with that. So if you all are not following me, please do. And then, of course, at the end of the episode, we will release all of Jenny's tags, and they'll be in the show notes and everything as well. But so, Jenny, introduce yourself. Tell us about your pretty little face.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. You're so sweet. So, I am Jenny, and as David mentioned, talking about the IFB, the Independent Fundamental Baptist Movement. So, my family is very deeply rooted in the IFB. My great grandfather was the predecessor to J. Frank Norris. If that name rings a bell, it's because J. Frank Norris was one of the founders of the IFB. My great grandfather was Dr. G.B. Vick. He was the pastor of Temple Baptist Church in Detroit, Michigan for many decades. And then he was also the founder of the Baptist Bible Fellowship as well as the Baptist Bible College in Springfield, Missouri. Um, if these names are ringing a bell or these institutions or colleges are ringing a bell, you're probably familiar with the IFB. So, born and raised in the IFB, my dad was a pastor. He was an intern pastor. And then we settled into the final pastorate, which was in Detroit, Michigan, Westland, Michigan. He was there for about 33 years. So my entire life was completely cloaked in the IFB. That being said, I will say my family was not your typical IFB preacher's family. My dad did allow my mom and I to wear pants. I would say, like, we weren't allowed to listen to regular music on the radio. We could listen to oldies. Okay. That was about the extent. Like, if we listened to anything other than oldies, we were in trouble. So, like, my Linkin Park CDs got thrown out, my Nirvana, my Smashing Pumpkins, those all got found and thrown out, unfortunately. Yeah, kind of sad. But yeah, we were not your typical IFB pastor's family in the sense that my dad wasn't like super legalistic, but he was also the kind of guy that just didn't want to deal with any problems or create any waves. So I remember when we first came to the church in Westland, which was Prayer Baptist Church, there was quite a few people in the congregation that were very much entrenched in the IFB. They were very strict with their own families, and there were deacons in the church that expected a certain level of legalism within the church. And when my dad came on, he really didn't push against that. So he started implementing some of this stuff in our own home. So, like the women not being able to wear pants, we had a conversation. It was like, well, I know it's not really a big deal. I don't find it biblical, but it's offending some people in the church. So let's just not have you and mom do it. And so little by little, little things started getting stripped away. We could wear pants or shorts on family vacations, but we couldn't do it on a regular basis. My brother, we went to public school until I was in sixth grade and he was in, I believe, 10th. And the reason that I got pulled from public school was because they wanted to teach sex education. God forbid, right? God forbid we learn about sex. Purity culture is like a big thing in the IFB. You do not have sex. You don't even think about sex till marriage. You say your wedding vows and then you can have sex, all the sex you want, as long as it's just with your husband. He can do whatever he wants to you, as long as it's in the marriage bedroom. My brother and I were yanked out of public school, went to Christian school. Quite a bit stricter than what I was used to, obviously. At this school in particular, it was then the rules were if your skirt wasn't below your knee or your slit wasn't pinned or sewn, like right at the crease or below the crease of the back of your knee, you were gonna like be in the hallway in front of everyone or the classroom in front of everyone. A teacher would come in with a ruler. And if your skirt didn't touch the ground or the slit on the back of your knee didn't hit the crease in the back of your knee, you were going home. You were suspended for the day. So these sort of things were like kind of scary for me because I was really actually a good kid, despite what a lot of the people in my dad's church would think, because I was always questioning like why? Where's this in the Bible? And because I questioned and I had like the critical thinking skills, I was automatically labeled as rebellious. She's trouble. She's a rebellious kid. She's a Jezebel. And that's how literally from the time I was like 12, 13, which is like really important years, like you're going through puberty, you're changing all this stuff. And all of a sudden I was being told, you're super rebellious, you're Jezebel. I mean, I wore pants on a family vacation and my youth leader at the time found out about it and came back and told my friends that I was a whore. 13 years old. I'm like, I don't even know what that means, but it can't be good, you know?
I wouldn't even have known that at 13.
I hadn't even been kissed by a boy at that point. I mean, truthfully, if I'm being totally transparent, my first kiss when I was 19, it was my college boyfriend. So that's how good I was. Like I was afraid to do anything like outside of the rules that were given to me because such fear was put into me. Like, if you do anything wrong, God's going to kill you in a car accident. God's going to give you cancer. And this is what you're taught. Like, you're taught this whole fear based control. And the weird thing is, it's like, my dad wasn't like that. It was the teachers and the people in my church that I was under. So, yeah, my dad was the pastor, but he wasn't. I hate to say this because he is passed. He did pass last year of dementia. And I did, make things right with him. But I do feel like it's important for me to say he did not defend me or my family. When it came down to it, he just didn't want to deal with it. And he felt like we should just deal with it too. It's not a big deal. Just forget about it. Just deal with it. And so that hurt because I felt like my dad, who is the man in my life at the time, isn't defending me, isn't coming to protect me. And so, yeah, it's that sort of translates later on as we get into other things. But
This question
yeah,
might be too soon. And if it is, tell me to just put a pin in it. But this far, what you have expressed about your father and how he was progressive, as far as, well, I mean, he was progressive, but especially when it came to this, do I use the word organization, community?
yeah, movement, whatever. Yeah, community.
Yeah. And so do you think that because of the money that comes into play, because when you have these churches and you have these leaders in the church, they make damn good money. So do you think that part of the reason he was able to just put a blanket over his progression was because, well, it's a paycheck or you wear jeans? Like, what do you think was the deciding factor on him choosing the church over his progressive mindset?
So that's an interesting question because actually, he did not make a very good salary through his time at Prayer Baptist. He really didn't. My mom, and they had a problem with this. My mom actually had a great, thriving career. She was a COO of a CPA firm. She was a boss lady. She was working like all the time, and she brought the money in. And so he didn't make a lot. She paid for the insurance and all of that. And so it actually saved the church quite a bit of money, but yet people had a problem with her working because a pastor's wife doesn't work. Pastor's wife is like typically the secretary of the church
Right.
or something of the sort, sitting at home knitting blankets for people who are having a baby shower. She was definitely different in the IFB because I can't even think of another IFB pastor's wife that worked outside the home and was successful in her career. But she also did fill the roles of a typical IFB pastor's wife where she did play the piano, she did play the organ, she was the sign language interpreter, she did all of those things. So she juggled so much and wore many hats. And to this day, she's an amazing, amazing person. And honestly, I don't think I would be who I am without her. But we recently had the conversation about the fact that we feel like my dad really was married to the ministry versus having us being a priority. We were number two, the church, the ministry was number one. And that hurt us in our relationship for quite some time. And it also affected my brother in many ways too. Like he doesn't want anything to do with church or God. He's atheist now. So, that's just, and that's his journey. And, I don't really blame him. I get where he's coming from because there was so much hurt and hypocrisy within the church. It's mind blowing because we would see behind the scenes as a pastor's family. We would have people who were literally mentally ill coming to our house at 2 a.m., knocking on the door barefoot, running from who they thought somebody was going to kill them or whatever. We had people, threatening to burn our house down. We had death threats. And as a kid, that was very traumatic, because I'm like, I don't understand what are we doing wrong? Like, why are these people, doing this stuff to us? And so you automatically put up that defense, that like boundary, and you're like, I am going to be here and play the part, but I'm not going to like get close with any of these people. I don't trust the adults in the room because they're nuts. And yeah, so it was interesting growing up as a pastor's kid for sure.
It was a very humbling experience I just had with you of automatically making the decision that your father was choosing money. So if it wasn't money, but there was a progressive mindset that he had, what do you think was the cause for him to bow down to what maybe his leaders are saying?
He just was very non-confrontational. And so he would rather push us at home to just give up certain things for the betterment of the church, for the betterment of the people. And, one of the things that was always brought up was, well, Paul talks about he won't eat meat offered to idols because not that it's necessarily wrong to eat meat offered to idols because it's just meat. Some of the people in the church at the time in the Bible were getting angry and they were being offended by it. And it was causing them to stumble because they were weaker mentally or weaker spiritually. So that's how it was explained to me. It's like, it's really not a big deal. It's not a sin for women to wear pants. But if it's going to make somebody stumble or it's going to cause them to have problems in their spiritual journey, then why do it? And that was sort of how it was explained to me. And then I would push back and say, where does it end? Do they have a problem with me wearing makeup? Do they have a problem with me wearing color? I mean, where does it end? Do they have a problem with me wearing jewelry? And then it was sort of squashed after that. Like I wasn't allowed to ask any more questions. It's like, I get where you're coming from, but it's just not worth the fight. It's not worth arguing over. So then it was just deal with it. So I did. And I kind of had really no choice at that point. And I know that when we talk about the IFB, a lot of times, women do bring up the whole like women couldn't wear pants and all that. But to me, it's further than that. It's a very like sexist thing to tell a woman what she is allowed to put on her body. Like it goes so much deeper than just, oh, women are just complaining because they can't wear pants. I mean, they would say there is a verse in the Bible that says, like, women should not be adorned in men's apparel. And that's the verse that was always used. And it's like, well, let's think about this. When was the Bible written? Because I'm pretty sure they didn't have pants and skirts back then. So what are they talking about exactly? Everybody was wearing robes, right? So I think the universe challenged me back and was like, actually, yeah, they do mean what else? And I got a rude awakening for this one. So this was a pretty traumatic experience for me. So around the same time, we went to youth camp and we would go to youth camp every single year. And if you ever see a picture of my mom, she's beautiful. She's going to be 73 next week, and she looks like she's the same age as me, 45. She has just always kept herself in shape. She will not leave the house without makeup and hair done. And I am the exact same way. What if I run into somebody I know? I don't want to look like I just rolled out of bed. My mom always taught us always look presentable because you just never know what opportunities are going to come along, who you're going to run into, whatever. So that's just always been my motto. Even if I'm camping, I'm doing my hair and makeup, y'all. I mean, if I'm canoeing down a river, I'm still going to look like this. I think that was really handed down to my mom from her mother because their generation, they really cared about being presentable in public. I went to youth camp. I think this was when I was about 13, same kind of time. And again, very like sensitive time in your life. You're going through puberty. I'm starting to feel kind of like not a kid anymore. Like I'm a teenager now, I'm developing. And so I started wearing some makeup and doing my hair and kind of taking real good care of myself. And we went to youth camp and there probably was 800 kids, I would say from junior high age up to high school, up to 18 years old in the audience from various churches in the Midwest. And my youth leader was kind of the MC of the camp for that week. And he got up and he said, Jenny Bartlett, I want you to come up here. And I was terrified. I was like, what did I do? And he had me come up on the platform. He had me sit in a folding chair in front of everyone. And then he called another girl's name who I didn't know. She came up and they put her chair right next to me. And the next thing I knew, he was explaining to everybody how me and this other girl were prima donnas because we did our makeup and hair and we couldn't go anywhere without having our makeup and hair done. And so they proceeded to crack raw eggs over our hair.
Literally.
Yes, on stage in front of everybody. They cracked raw eggs over our hair. They put, I forget, ketchup or jelly or something like on our lips for lipstick and rouge. They were just making an absolute foolery of us on the stage in front of like almost 1,000 people.
Shame.
And honestly, like my dad sat there and laughed and watched and didn't come and rescue me and didn't come and say anything. And all of my friends are laughing and my youth leaders are all laughing and everybody is just making, and we were made a spectacle of, honestly. And I was 13 years old. The crazy thing is I had actually suppressed that memory until about 4 years ago. And it came out of my memory out of nowhere. And I just started sobbing. And I'm like, I can't believe that no adult came to my rescue. And that's how messed up the IFB is. They wanted to make me and this other girl a public example because we took care of ourselves and we actually cared about our appearance. And they said that vanity was a sin. And the Bible talks about vanity and we were too vain and, all this stuff. So they were making a public example out of both of us because we cared about what we looked like. So that was like the first big traumatic experience I had as a kid in the IFB.
But I feel like there's so many different levels to that too, right? Like it's one thing, it's one type of trauma to
Yeah.
to experience that without your parents being there, who are your protectors, right? But then to see your dad out there, like that's a whole second kind of trauma that, wow.
Hmm.
Was that the first? I know that you said that it's a fairly new memory, but was that the first time that you remember having like that moment with your father of like, who the fuck are you? Like, why are you not being a father?
Yeah. And I mean, the pants thing was fairly like close to that in time frame. So there was some things that just kind of led up to that that was like, why aren't you doing anything about this? Because I'm a very loyal person. And so to me, if a friend or family member is getting hurt or discredited or mocked or lied about or whatever, I'm coming to their defense. Like I am your posse. If you are my friend, I am there for you. And then when everybody sat there and just allowed it to happen and then went further and was laughing about it, I'm like, who has my back? Like nobody has my back. So then I sort of put up this front, like, I'm tough. I don't need anybody. Like, I'm just this person that, I can just let things roll off my shoulders. Well, I was kind of carrying that burden the whole time. And I really started like not trusting people. I don't know if any of my friends knew that, but I basically was like, I don't trust any of y'all. Like, I love you, but who's to say you don't go behind my back and do something? I don't know. So that was a hard, hard pill to swallow when I was 13. So I went through high school, got through it. And then my dad and my uncle's alma mater is Bob Jones University. So if you know anything about Bob Jones University, it's in Greenville, South Carolina. It is a liberal arts university. It was kind of rooted more in the Methodist, but I would say the majority of the people that they have going there attending are Baptist and more or less independent fundamental Baptist. So I was sent there after I graduated. And gosh, I would say second semester of my freshman year, I met a guy. We fell in love pretty quickly. He was the same, year as me, and I don't know. He was just a wonderful person. And so we dated for about 3 years and we talked marriage and our parents had met, our families had met, and we had a wedding date. I had a dress, all of that, and we took a family vacation with just him and his parents and me and my parents up to Mackinac Island in Michigan. And it was so weird because the very last day we were there, we were sitting in an ice cream shop. And I remember it was a round table. And after we sat, we got our ice cream and we're all sitting there just shooting the shit, just normal. And my dad kind of sits up and he goes, well, we're at a round table. We might as well have a round table discussion. And I was like, looking over, I'm like, what's about to happen? And he proceeded to argue with essentially my fiance's dad about the King James Version of the Bible. So the IFB, if you're a true IFBer, you believe that the King James Version 1611 version of the Bible is the one true and only Bible that ever existed. Not the original manuscripts, not the Greek and Hebrew, the King James Bible. So if you read or study from anything else, you're a heretic. You might as well be an atheist. You might as well be a Satan worshiper. Okay? So he starts to have this conversation with his dad. It starts to get heated. And then we basically finish our ice cream and leave. It didn't end well. We get in the car and my dad says, you will not marry that boy. And I just broke down and just started sobbing. I mean, it takes about 4 hours to get home from Mackinac Island, and I sobbed the whole way because I knew, being raised the way I was raised in the IFB, you're taught children obey your parents. And if you don't obey your parents, something bad is going to happen to you. So I'm like, I have to break up with him. Like, I'm being forced to break up with this guy. I'm like in love with him. We were crazy about each other. So I'm like, he was my first love, my first kiss, my first everything but sex. So we literally were like, we're getting married. Like, let's just wait for that part of it till the wedding night. And we did. We were going to. So long story short, we broke up. We had to break up. And so my final year of college, I was shipped off to West Coast Baptist College on the opposite side of the United States, which is in California. So that summer between that happening, my junior and senior year, my dad brought on an interim youth pastor. The interim youth pastor, who was a single guy that had graduated from Crown College and then had started getting his master's at West Coast Baptist College. He is the son of a semi-prominent IFB evangelist. So my dad already knew him, knew the family. We'd had his dad, preach at my dad's church before. We were familiar with them. So he had him come and be an interim youth pastor at my dad's church. And I had taken counseling. And so I was already working with the youth group that summer for college credits. So as it turns out, it was very much impressed upon me that this was God's will for my life and not the guy I was actually in love with. So after that summer, we were basically kind of forced to be courted together. And then I got shipped off to West Coast Baptist College where I finished my senior year and he attempted to finish his master's degree over there. So we dated during that time and then got engaged in December. And we actually got married on the wedding date that I had set with the love of my life back then. And I remember my best friend, who was my college roommate my junior year at Bob Jones, she was one of my bridesmaids and she was in the bathroom with me right before I walked down the aisle and she kind of grabbed my shoulders and she goes, Jen, you don't have to do this. I got a car waiting right there out in the parking lot. I could get you out of here. Like, I know you don't want to do this. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? There's like 450 people in the auditorium waiting for me to walk down the aisle. Like, I can't just run. This is like, I can't. Like, what am I going to do? So I went through with it. And I actually, the weird thing, because we're talking about this, I was doing yoga this morning and a memory popped into my head of the wedding ceremony, which is really messed up because I had heard my dad perform thousands of weddings. So I knew the wedding vows by heart. I had them memorized, like I knew them. We're up there, we're facing each other, we're saying the wedding vows. And all of a sudden, he adds a part to the wedding vows that I've never heard him add before. And there's a part, if I don't even know where the video is, I probably destroyed it in a bonfire, but if I was able to resurrect the VHS of the ceremony, it says, when you're going through the vows, he added, I choose you to be my husband. And when I had to say that to him, I started crying because I pictured the other guy and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, what? I'm literally like effing up my life right now in front of 450, 500 people. But I went through with it.
I want to dive into the I choose you. That is not a
Yeah.
comment that you wrote or said willingly, and obviously
No.
the reaction to it. But what I think is so interesting is when we say, like, I choose you, the next question to me would be like, but why did I choose you?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it gets ugly and scary, right? Like, I'm choosing you because I was told I had to. I was choosing you
Right.
because I'm damned to hell if I don't. And at this point, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but like I'm saying what my brain would be thinking. Like, not one time would it come out of my mouth that I chose you because of love.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. I wasn't even attracted to him. That's how bad it was. Like I was repulsed by him, to be honest with you. So we obviously married and went straight to the honeymoon. And this is where it gets kind of crazy. We went on the honeymoon, and the first night I was not able to have sex. So I thought, well, I'm a virgin, so it might take a little bit of work, you know. And then the second night, still wasn't able to. The third night, still wasn't able
Like
to.
physically.
Physically, he was not able to penetrate. So the abuse started very early, like on the honeymoon. It's like, what's wrong with you? You must have done something, I mean, just immediately like gaslighting me, like projecting something's wrong with me. And I had no idea. I'm like, I don't know why my body isn't working, but I knew like subconsciously I didn't want to with him. But I also didn't know that my body could literally shut it down. Be like, you ain't getting in there. Sorry. You know, I didn't even know my body could do that because I never had sex before. I never had intercourse. So this was all new to me. And so I remember when we got back from the honeymoon, I made an appointment at the OBGYN. She examined me and she said, well, you have a condition called vaginismus. Now, I understand that the term has changed to be called something else now, but at the time, that's what she called it. And she said, this is actually fairly common and essentially sees it with rape victims. And I cried because I'm like, I literally, that's what it felt like to me. I was not enjoying it. I was crying. I was like, please stop. This is painful. I'll go to the doctor. I'll do whatever, but let's not do this. And then talking about the fact that I saved myself for marriage. So then I was mad at myself. Like, why didn't I just go ahead with the other guy and actually experience a good time? And you're taught like your whole life, you have to save yourself for marriage and you're in this purity culture. You have to be modest and you can't cause a boy to lust after you. So there's all this burden on me as a female within the IFB. And then all of a sudden, you're released of all of that when you get married. And it's supposed to be this wonderful thing where your experience is euphoric. And it was the exact opposite of that. It was like torture. And so at the gynecologist, she told me I had this condition. And I said, well, what is the solution? What do I do? And she said, well, you have to undergo surgery to the point where I'm under all the way. And essentially, she would make little incisions in the muscle to where the muscle couldn't contract. And then also insert dilators at different size dilators until they got to like the biggest one while I was under to ensure that my body was able to accept something inside of it. And so I underwent the surgery. Everything was a success, according to, medically a success. And then after I had time to heal, it was like, okay, let's do this. I wasn't saying that, he was saying that. So my body maybe was able to accept that, but my mind still wasn't there. It was the complete opposite. It was still where it was before. And so then I just felt like I was being molested every single time. It was like the most miserable thing. And so I lived like that for 5 years
Do you
in my
mind if
marriage.
I ask, and forgive my ignorance, but with this medical procedure and this diagnosis I've never heard of before, so that is very interesting. But do you personally think your body would have had that reaction if it would have been someone that you wanted to have sex with, such as the person that you were engaged
No,
to, that you actually chose? So do you think that surgery is something that, and again, I'm ignorant to it, right? So maybe there is this thing where this does need to happen, but do you think that you truly needed that, or do you think your body was just protecting itself because?
oh, yeah, I think that for the time and purpose that I was in, obviously I was married for 5 years. Like you can't not have sex for 5 years. So I think that it was kind of a necessary evil. But had I had that experience with somebody I was attracted to and actually loved, I don't think I would have had to do it. I don't think I would have had to have the procedure. No. I just feel like that's how against the whole relationship I was. Even subconsciously, I didn't realize how bad it was until I had to go through that. And then, even after I was so called fine physically, my mind still wasn't there. I mean, it was like he would touch me and my skin would crawl. Like, get off of me. Like,
Did
ugh.
he know? Did he know that you did not want to marry him? Because I know you
Yes.
have not used these words, and I'm definitely
Mhm.
not trying to insinuate words, but what immediately went through my mind when you were telling me this was arranged marriage.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was definitely an arranged situation. And yeah, at some point, I got so mad that I told him, I'm still in love with this guy. I'm not in love with you. I'm not even attracted to you. He was abusive. And I'm just like, at some point, I ended up getting my voice because I was scared for a long time and let him, control me and abuse me. And then, of course, then it went to, you must be cheating then. Cause like, how could anyone resist him type of thing? And oh God, if you ever saw a picture of him, you would laugh your ass off. I swear to God. He would be like, oh girl, I feel so bad for you. Yeah. So I always thought, like, wow, sex is so disappointing. I just was so sad about it because I'm like, you're taught that sex is this wonderful thing and it's so enjoyable. And then you actually have it, my experience anyway, at the time. And I was so let down. I'm like, this is supposed to be the best thing in life, and it sucks this bad. I mean, not to mention the fact that he knew absolutely nothing of what he was doing, but still, I wasn't attracted to him. So anything that he tried, I wasn't into it.
Would you consider the sexual encounters that you had with this man, would you consider it rape?
Yes, I would. Because there were times that I was just like, please stop crying. I'm like literally crying
Okay.
and telling him, stop. I don't want to do this. And I was told it's your wifely duty. You are commanded in the Bible to not defraud your husband. Like, you have to submit to me. He would say, like, you are not to defraud me, or you are, in sin. So there was one day I was at work. I worked at a retirement community at the time. And one of the girls that worked in the office with me, she actually grew up in my dad's IFB church. We grew up together. And so we're sitting there and she goes, oh my God, I can't wait to get home and have sex with my husband tonight. And I laughed and I was like, really? I was like, why? And she's like, what do you mean, why? She's like, because it's amazing. And I was like, you're so lucky. I was like, I hate it. She's like, you hate it? I'm like, I seriously hate sex. And she's like, how can you hate sex? Like the best thing ever. I'm like, well, I don't know what planet you're on, but in the planet I'm on, it sucks. And she's like, okay, girl, after work, I'm taking you somewhere. I'm like, where are we going? She's like, don't ask any questions. So
Uh-oh.
I hop in her car and she takes me to a sex shop. And she's like, okay, I'm getting you a toy. You're going to take it home. You're going to use it. And then you're going to report back to me. So we go there, I purchase something, and then she's like, you better report back to me. So it took a couple days because I had to wait for him to like leave the house. So he leaves the house. I use it. And let me tell you, David, it was like the angels were flying around my head, fireworks were going off. I was like, hallelujah, praise the Lord. This is not my problem. And it was amazing. It was the first time I ever felt that. And I'm like, okay, now what? Because I know now that it is possible for me to enjoy an intimate relationship with someone, just not this guy.
Yeah.
So now what do I do, right?
Well,
I
and
mean,
my curiosity
obviously,
would go, I would go out of my mind with curiosity because if I felt that way with a toy, imagine how I feel
exactly.
that way with someone there was a connection to.
Exactly. But see, I was still in the IFB. In fact,
Right.
he became the official youth pastor of my dad's church. So here I am, youth pastor's wife. I got to be all prim and proper and, play the part and act the way I'm supposed to act. And yet I'm living in an abusive marriage. I have a terrible sex life. And now I'm like in love with my vibrator. What do I do? So, so that was a difficult thing to try and navigate because I still had to I don't know, I still had to play this part, right? So one day he found it under the sink in one of the bathrooms. And he was like, "What is this?" And I was like, "Well, it's just for me. I just use it on myself." And he's like, "You're cheating on me. This is cheating." And then he was like accusing me of cheating and being an adulterer and that, God was going to basically, he read some Bible verse one day to
Oh,
me that
God.
was like, God is going to make your thigh rot or something. I don't know. I was like, I don't even know what that means, but that's really messed up. Like, so God doesn't want me to have like an enjoyable sex life. He actually created sex. So that doesn't make any sense. And then I just started thinking, like, in my head, I got to leave this guy. Like, I am not going to be in this marriage for the rest of my life. There's no way. Now that I know that, like, I could have pleasure and have like a good time so with someone else, I'm like, I'm not staying in this. I'm sorry. Like, I'm not going to stay in this abusive relationship and a sexless, relationship that I don't enjoy at all. Well, then I found out I was pregnant. And, it just seems it's like it's kind of weird. It's like I was ready to leave and then boom, I'm pregnant. And it took almost 5 years to get pregnant. So I didn't think I could get pregnant. I'm like, I'm not getting pregnant. So I don't even know what's going on there. So boom, pregnant. And then I'm thinking, well, now I have to stay because now we're about to have a child together. The whole pregnancy, he was saying, it's not my kid. I know it's not my kid. You're cheating on me. You cheated on me, all this stuff. I had my daughter, and the abuse just kind of intensified after having her. And so I just started like praying, okay, God, I know that you do not want me to be miserable for the rest of my life. Like, I'm your child and you want better and bigger things for me than I could even imagine for my own child. And now that I'm a parent, I would never expect my daughter to be in this kind of relationship because she took a vow at the wedding altar. I just wouldn't. And so I started just saying, like, hey, please give me an exit, open the door for me in some capacity, but you have to make it abundantly clear when it's time for me to leave because I knew it had to be the perfect timing. So because he was a youth pastor, we went this was in April, I believe, of the year I left. So I left a month after this happened, or 3 weeks. We went to this youth conference at West Coast Baptist College with about 8 of the youth group kids. So going from Detroit all the way out to California, big trip. It was a 3-day trip, and we were to go from like Thursday to Saturday, get back Saturday night. Next day would be Sunday. So we go, and by the end of the first evening, the kids had formed kind of a little group, and they pulled me into the stairwell. They grabbed me out of my hotel room, pulled me into the stairwell, and they said, "You need to divorce him." Because they had seen the abuse firsthand for the first time, like close up. It was that bad. And they were like, "You need to divorce him. Like, you cannot live like this." And I'm thinking, these are like 14, 15-year-old kids that I'm supposed to be ministering to, right? How am I supposed to react to this? I gotta tread lightly. I don't even know what to say. I'm like, "Oh, you guys are so sweet. I love y'all. We're trying to figure things out, whatever." Well, things progressively got worse over the 3 days. And by the time we got back to Michigan, that next morning was Sunday, which is church. My dad's phone was getting blown up by all the parents of these kids that had gone. And they were like, "We are not sending our kid to the youth group anymore until he is fired." And so my dad's like, "Okay, I don't know what happened, but like, let's have a meeting after church and we can all talk it out." So it was all the parents that had kids that went on the trip and all the kids, and then me and him and my mom and dad. And so basically the kids outed him, and they were like, "This is how he was treating her. This is what happened." They were giving all these examples. Of course, he's a narcissist. So what do? They deny everything and gaslight. So, of course, everything was my fault, whatever. Yes. So I hadn't even told anybody what else was going on at home personally, because I had actually stopped having sex with him altogether. he started making threats like, I'm going to kidnap our daughter. And then he was threatening to murder me. He would have a gun loaded and cocked on the nightstand every night and remind me the gun is right here. If you try to leave or whatever, or if I decide that I want to take care of you or whatever,
Oh, if I decide,
that's right here.
so I'm God. He's God,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Absolutely. He is God and he does nothing wrong. So I had actually found underage pornography on the computer just after this trip we took with the teenagers and girls the same age that were in our youth group. And so I was mortified, one, because it's minors. And two, he's a youth pastor and he's supposed to be ministering to the same age group that he's getting off to. So I confronted him about it. And again, the gaslighting. Well, you're not having sex with me. What am I supposed to do? So that was his mindset. And so the last straw was, remember the friend that tried to get me to like not marry him at the altar? So she comes back into play. She, around this time, she was going through a divorce and she lived in Indiana at the time. And she's like, I have nowhere to go. All my family's in PA and I just want to like start over somewhere. So I'm like, move to Michigan, come up here. So we had our basement refinished and she was living down there in like a little apartment we made for her. So she lived with us for a few months and she was divorced newly out of the IFB. So her and I would go shopping at the mall and I had lost all my baby weight. So she's like, let's go shopping. And we would go to like Forever 21. I know it sounds goofy, but they have some cute clothes. Okay. Don't judge. So we
Yeah,
went
never
there
done.
and so we bought some cute things that are not IFB approved. And we came home and he saw that either she or I was wearing like a mini skirt or like a shorter, like denim skirt of some sort that we had gotten. That evening, we all went to bed. I was sleeping in a separate bedroom with the door locked with my infant daughter. He was sleeping in the main bedroom with his gun, and she was sleeping downstairs in the apartment that we had made. So about 2 in the morning, he busts in the door of my bedroom and all I can see is his silhouette in the doorway. And I'm thinking, is he going to kill me? Like, what's he going to do? I had no idea what was happening. And he didn't say anything. I sat up. I was like, what are you doing? By now, my baby is crying. She's upset. I'm trying to console her. I'm like, what are you doing? He didn't say anything. He just kept running through the house, looking in every room, turning the lights on and off, ran downstairs to where my best friend was sleeping. And I chased after him, like, what are you doing? And he wouldn't answer me. So finally, he runs back upstairs, goes into his bedroom, turns the light off, and goes back to bed. Doesn't say a word. Well, now I'm pissed because I'm like, you woke everybody up. The baby's crying. Like, you're acting a fool. What in the heck is going on? So I flick on the light. And I had started actually gaining more strength at this time because I forgot to insert this. Actually, I started going to a nonprofit domestic violence organization for help at this point. So it was about a month before I left, just before the trip that we took with the teenagers. And nobody knew I was getting counseling from these people. And when I was telling them about the abuse, immediately the counselor was like, okay, we need to get you and your daughter into a safe house. And that scared me because I'm like, is this worse than what I think it is? Like, am I not reacting the way I should? And I sort of freaked out a little bit, but she's like, at the very least, you need an exit plan. You need a go bag. And so she explained to me, I didn't even know what that meant at the time. So I had all that in place, just kind of stuff in the background, like, okay, if we ever needed to leave, suddenly this is what we're doing. So me and my best friend had our little go bags and everything ready. So after I flicked on the light and I said, what are you doing? He sat up and he looked at me with the creepiest look in his face. And he said, I'm casting out demons from this house. I said, you should probably cast them out of yourself first. And
Okay.
I said, I am out of here. So then I grabbed my daughter. We grabbed our bags. I ran downstairs and I told my girlfriend, get up, we're leaving. So then she gets up, grabs her bag. We head out to the car. And then, of course, he's standing in front of the car, like, you're not leaving. You're not, I'm not letting you leave. You can't take my daughter. And I'm like, I will literally run you over. Like, get out of my way. So then from there, we went to my mom and dad's. We got a restraining order and we had three different police reports in three different cities in Michigan because he had been violating and, harassing and all that kind of stuff. So it was definitely a situation that I never thought I would be in my life. If you were to take that 13-year-old girl in the IFB and fast forward and show her that, I would be like, yeah, no, I can't even fathom that life. And so it was literal hell. I mean, sometimes people get divorced and then the guy kind of leaves her alone. Maybe he moves on and everybody just goes their separate ways and it's fine and things are water under the bridge. But he was just ramping up because at that point, then, because we had split custody, he started using my daughter like as a pawn to manipulate and cause a lot of problems and issues throughout the 18 years. So, and I left when she was 6 months. So she was still an infant. But yeah, I mean, in a condensed version, that's sort of my life. And I was a single mom for, gosh, maybe 6-ish years. And then I met my current husband, which was refreshing because he was never raised in church or any religion at all, which was amazing because he didn't have any like preconceived notions about anything. And when I would tell him about how I was raised, he was like, you're like from another planet. Like, this is so weird. I've never heard of anything like this before. And really, essentially, what he was saying is, you were in a cult. It's not normal. So, yeah,
Whew.
that's sort of
I
my IFB experience.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing all that with us. And I don't want it to seem like we're coming to an abrupt stop, but like you said, those chapters of your life in a nutshell. We've got other projects coming in the future. I want to do something that's more like a rapid fire kind of question. So I have like
Okay.
three questions I want to ask you. That's going to bring it more onto a maybe a lighter side of things because I know that we spend a lot of time talking about deep, dark, heavy things. But one of the reminders I like to throw out to people is look at you. You're living your best life. You are sharing your story to help others because you are in such a great place. And so there
Hmm.
is life after trauma. And we would
Hmm.
not be speaking of this was in a place where it would trigger you to have an upsetting next few days. However, I do like to always end things on a fun thing. So before we get to the fun part,
Hmm.
a question that I have for you, where do you stand with God? What is your religion now?
So I would not pigeonhole myself into any kind of religion per se. I would just say I'm a believer in God. I'm a Christ follower, but I definitely do not go to any church or am not affiliated with any organized religion whatsoever at this point. Religion is man-made, so I don't really want any part of it. We did like dabble in it a little bit for a few years here. I would say maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we started going to a church, and that ended up being a pretty big disappointment as well. Kind of this, not the same type of things, but just a lot of hypocrisy and just, oh, what's the word? People just being so presumptuous. I mean, I just, and so I'm like, I think my whole life I kind of had to be a little bit fake just to sort of play the part. And when I left my first marriage and I was out of religion altogether and was in the world and kind of experienced real life, I was like, I never want to be that person again. I never want to be fake again. So what you see is what you get at this point. I'm just going to be me. And if people can't accept that, then yeah, like I don't know what to say. But the people that are in my life that know that I'm a genuine person, that I truly care about people, I'm a loyal friend, like I give my all to the people that love me and that I love them. And so I just really I want nothing to do with church or religion at this point. Like I said, I do believe in God and I do, have a relationship with him. I do yoga every day. I manifest along with that. I believe that, the law of attraction, and I believe in frequencies and vibrations. I believe in all that. I think we are all magnetic beings and we attracts like. And so I don't know if that makes me new agey or, sounds woo woo to some of you people. Like, I think that's all very much godly. I think that he created us as electric magnetic beings. And so I believe in all that. They don't teach that in church. They don't teach that in organized religion, which is unfortunate. Like, your chakras are there for a reason. They're God given. Like, why aren't we talking about this stuff? Why aren't we talking about vibrations and frequencies? Why aren't we talking about that? So that's kind of has been my journey and my experience. I was recently having a conversation with somebody, actually a former IFB pastor, and we were talking about how important it is to seek truth. And I said, I think the biggest problem in the IFB churches is that they put their own paradigm over truth. They cannot have their paradigm shattered. They have an image of God that they have created in their mind, or they have an image of how things are supposed to be, and they can't challenge that. They won't challenge it. And that's wrong. I mean, that's definitely a cult. So, I'm a truth seeker. I definitely am a truth seeker. And, I love helping people and using for a long time. I was bitter about my story because it took me, if I'm being totally honest, it took me a couple decades to get over my first love. And like I would grieve. And I kind of, in a way, had to tell myself that he died just so that I could get over it. Because essentially, in my life, he did die.
Sure.
And so I had to kind of look at it that way. And then I was really kind of able to move on. But I was bitter for a long time because I was like, God, I did everything I was supposed to do. I saved myself for marriage. I did XYZ. I obeyed my parents, all the things. And this is what I get? Seriously? So I had to go through my own journey of kind of finding God again organically. And I did, but now it's so different than the typical church every Sunday or Wednesday night, wearing a certain outfit or a certain kind of clothing. It's none of that. This is who I am, the real me, the raw me, and God loves me for that. And it's okay to question him and it's okay to be upset and mad and bitter because at the end of the day, the journey is going to take you to a destination that he ultimately wants you to be at. And not only that, but why let that other person win by being bitter about what happened to you? Take that and help other people with it. And that's what I'm doing now. And that's how I'm able to come out on the other side of it and really fully heal from all of that. Like somebody said the other day, oh, I can't wait till my ex-husband dies because then I can finally be happy. And I'm like, why? Don't let him have space in your head. Who cares?
Where do these people do they live in Florida? Because that's where a lot of the true crime stuff happens. And we could be first for the true crime case for a new podcast. I'm just saying.
No, this person lives in Indiana.
That is the number two place for true crime.
I was going to say, yeah, Indiana's pretty bad for crimes too.
I love everything that you just said. And what I find really cool, and this is me creating a narrative in a story. You don't feel like you need to agree to it. Change it any way that you want. But had you and I met during the IFB times, I would feel like you would want to accept me and be friends with me, but that you just couldn't and you wouldn't be. And then, like, fast forward to however many years later, we have one phone call and we text nonstop. Like your husband and children are probably like, "Who is David?" And am I wrong with that? Like, had we met X years ago, you probably would have wanted to be my friend, but not allowed to be my
Mhm.
friend.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, it was taboo. Like you are not to have a relationship with anybody that's part of the LGBT, community at all. Like you don't even think about it,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, it's really, really crazy. Just what we were taught. The whole thing is messed up. So another a great example of why I'm not part of any of that,
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, just getting to know you and meeting you and everything has just been so refreshing. And seriously, like, I don't know, there should be more people like you out there because you're just so genuine and real. And I love that.
Thanks. Well, listen, I tell people all the time, if hell is filled with people like me, it can't be that bad of a place. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, exactly.
so thank you for saying that. Okay, so as we're closing out, I want to ask you a couple of fun questions. Just spit.
Okay.
There's no right or wrong. Just spit the first thing
Okay.
out of your mind. So, number one,
Okay.
what's the most surprising thing you've learned about yourself after leaving the IFB?
That sex is actually good.
I love that.
Also, okay, here's just a little other thing is that I actually found what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of my sexuality. I kind of discovered my sexuality for the first time. I remember just being always in these frumpy clothes and just feeling just kind of homely and not pretty. And when I left the IFB and me and my girlfriend started going to Forever 21 and getting some cute outfits and going out dancing and stuff like that. It was like for the first time in my life, I actually felt sexy. And
Mm.
I never felt that in my life. And I'm like, wow, I really like this. And we started getting attention from guys and things that we were not used to, and it was fun. So yeah, I would say like number one, definitely my sexuality. I
I love that, like, so many people would feel shameful even saying that, and you just spit it right out. Like, I love that. I admire that. That is amazing. Like, I want everyone to have that freedom. Part of that
Mhm.
self identity is sexuality. Love
And
that. And
also being comfortable in your own skin and being like, wow, like I am attractive to other people and I do love my body and my curves and you're accepting of yourself for the first time. That was my experience anyway. And I'm like, okay, let's go to the beach and I'm wearing a bikini. Never done that before.
yeah. Okay. Question number two. What does freedom mean to you now?
Hmm, that is a really interesting question. I think freedom means being comfortable in your own skin, but also being able to accept the things that have happened to you in your past because it has made you who you are now and accepting that and actually embracing it. And then taking that a step further and actually changing the world with that. If you had some kind of traumatic experience happen to you in your life, your childhood, your adulthood, whatever, what are you doing with that? Are you just letting it sort of, ruminate and destroy you mentally and physically? Because it will eventually. Are you seeking help mentally? Are you going to a therapist? Are you seeking a life coach? Are you doing anything? Do the work because I did do the work. And I think that's important to note is that I didn't heal myself. Yes, I had a lot to do with it because you have to do the work on your own. But there's reasons why there are mental health experts and professionals out there because I think for so long, because of previous generations kind of shied away from all of that. Oh, why would you go to a shrink? What do you need a shrink for? Only crazy people go to shrinks. And they would sort of, mock that or, discredit that type of thing. And now it's a lot more available, I think, than it used to be. And I say take advantage of that because I did years of therapy where literally all I did was just talk it out, kind of like we are here. It was like a friend talking across, the room with me, and I'm just spilling my guts and telling how I felt about certain things that happened to me. And she would ask me, well, why do you think you felt that way in that moment or what? And then I would go deeper and then deeper. And it was like, wow, where does this all come from? And I was able to get to the root of all of it. And essentially, when we come down to it, we all have that inner child that we need to take care of and love and tell that your inner child that you are worthy and you're acceptable and you have a future and you have a reason for being here. And to find that purpose is so important. And so I was able to do that and actually went a little bit further in my therapy because of such abuse that I went through. I had to do some hypnotherapy as well, which was very effective. I know some people that may be like, duh, I don't want to do that. What if I end up like Peter from Office Space and I never snap out of it? Maybe in a way I did because I was basically like, screw all y'all. I'm going to do my own thing.
I was going to say, like, wouldn't that be that bad though?
Yeah. Where basically it's like, oh, yeah, don't really care anymore. Oh, wait, you're telling me that I should care? Yeah, I don't.
Yeah. What is something that was brand new to you that you did or thought or said that just embarrasses the hell out of you now when you think back on it? That is just completely out of what anyone outside of IFB would think.
Oh, gosh, that's a tough one. Well, me and my girlfriend, we did a lot of clubbing because we would go out dancing and stuff like that. So I think like some of it was etiquette out and about, like just trusting a lot of people and then not knowing kind of any street smarts. We learned fast. And then also definitely not having a clue how to order alcohol. That was pretty funny. We were like, oh, what kind of alcohol do you know about? Like, I don't know. I've heard of strawberry daiquiri. Okay, let's get one of those. And then people would be like, you're getting a strawberry daiquiri? Like, what are you, 80? Do you live in Florida? Yeah. Now I'm like, make shots for my friends. So I don't know. As far as like, and gosh, I think I used to say, I didn't used to swear, or now I do because I'm like, whatever. But I think like saying gosh and darn and, things like that is like, people would be like, what are you from like the 1940s? I would say certain things and they'd be like, this is like the 21st century, right? You don't have to say gosh and darn.
Well, it has to be just the simple things of like walking into like a club and seeing the lights and hearing the loud music. And at that time, you could probably smoke inside bars at that time.
Yes.
People are dancing on each other, and you're probably thinking about like, well, I had to dance at church, but it's arm length away.
Oh, we weren't even allowed to dance. Not even like that, David. We were never allowed to dance ever. There was no dancing. We didn't have a prom. I went to Christian school. We didn't have a prom. We had senior banquet. So we would dress up in our formals for once a year and we would go to this hotel conference room and have it, they would be catered in and then we'd have a preacher preach to us about how basically, we need to pick a good godly school to go to in college and, all this stuff. That was my prom. So we didn't get to dance. There was no dancing. In fact, a funny little fun tip about me. So I didn't know how to dance and I knew, going out to the clubs and stuff like that. So I actually took 5 years, everybody, of adult hip hop dance classes. And they were amazing. I met the funnest freaking people in this class. And to this day, I'm like, I got to find another adult hip hop dance class because that was super fun. But I would have never thought that I would do something like that. When I was in the IFB, it's like dancing. Oh my gosh, like I can't dance. You can't dance. It's like devil worship.
I was going to say, like, do you leave there feeling anything negative?
No, God, no. I was like, this is so fun. Why don't they do this? Because it's not, It's not in the Bible. It's not like thou shalt not dance. It's not in the Bible.
I will say,
And then,
I think it does say, "Thou shalt not dance if you're David," because I don't have a beat. But I do want to start doing like I've had it on my bucket list for years, and just haven't done it yet. But I want to do some pole dancing. Not and
do it.
honestly, mostly just because I think it'll break me out of my shell a little bit with my confidence, and I
Mhm.
think because where I still have some nerve damage and elements from my attack, that it would help like
Mhm.
work that out, but maybe in a way that I would enjoy because I'm not going to a gym. I will go to a plastic surgeon. They can suck whatever out that they want and put it somewhere
Mhm.
else, but I'm not going to a gym. So I thought if I did something
Dancing
like
is so much
that,
more fun.
yeah. So I thought if I did something like that, and I've always been like, I like the pole dancing, and I would put one in my room, and I would pole
Good.
dance the hell out of it. Damn
So
it.
yeah, dancing is definitely better exercise than just going to the gym and, dealing with all that.
That is so cool. Jenny, thank you for this conversation.
Healing is a process, a journey to be experienced, not just a destination.
You are not alone in this. It's okay to take your time, explore different perspectives, and find what resonates with you. Healing takes courage, and we believe in you.
Together, we can enjoy the ride.